God's Feeding Station, and another latest broadcast. I'm Pastor Doug White, and we're in the book of Ruth. It's been kind of fun to be in an Old Testament passage and going through the narrative story. I'm in one studio. Henry Loke is in the other studio. Henry, I don't know if we even came up with a title, did we?
I just did Love and Devotion. I mean, Ruth's Love and Devotion that she's going to show to Naomi here.
Yeah.
That we're going to read about today is pretty intense.
That's great. Yeah, I see that in the context.
Pretty special, yep.
Okay, so we're going to start, let's say, verse 11. And just to, I guess actually 9 is where we ended, so I'll start with 10. Kind of bring us up to speed from the latest broadcast and where we were. There's women in the center stage here of this story. The men are dead. The sons are gone. There's been somewhat of an attempt to hand her over. And Naomi's she's going, okay, now go find yourself another husband. In verse 9, may the Lord grant to each of you and find rest in the home of another husband. So I think she's saying, I'm setting you free. Then she kisses them, and they wept aloud. And they said to her, we will go back with you to your people. Isn't that interesting? But Naomi says, return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband, even if I thought there was still hope for me. Even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it's more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has gone out against me. Boy, there's a shift, huh? Mm-hmm. Before we go any further with 14, what do you think you hear in that story?
Well, she's talking about the God's love. Look, if a man dies, a brother is supposed to step in and marry the woman and take care of her and continue the lineage. Well, from Naomi's perspective, there are no more sons.
Right. It's over.
She's
over.
Her husband's dead, so there's no one to have sons with, and she's past the age of childbearing.
Yeah. And
not that that stopped God before, but she's saying to them, look, you have a better shot at just surviving if you could just go back.
Right.
And there's no and there's the interesting thing to me is there's no talk of like the idolatry that's going on that goes on in Moab with the god Chemosh. Right, that's their god.
That's their god, man.
And they're not. Naomi's not even thinking about any of that. All she's thinking about is, you know what, you guys just need to take care of yourself because I cannot do it for you. Right. I cannot provide you husbands. There are no other men in this family to take care of you.
And even if one showed up, it's too far out.
Yeah, it's just if I could have kids, are you going to wait another 20 years?
So she's got a pretty strong practical lens, doesn't she?
Yep.
Okay, she's using good practical wisdom.
She takes a little backhand swipe at God at the end there.
I think so. When she says, sons who could become your husbands, I believe what she's saying is you look at the Israelite law in Deuteronomy chapter 25, starts around verse 5, maybe goes to 10, and you'll learn a little bit about the importance of marriage and carrying on the line, what that was all about. Now, if we were to go to the New Testament, we'd be in Mark 12, 18 to 23, and we find out that there's reasons why they want even a widow to be remarried. And obviously, it's to continue the family line. So there's the backhand swipe. She's like, I'm too old. You know what? My womb is empty. She's almost saying, God's, forsaken me. And, there's other stories in the Bible when you look of Abram and the situation where I'm too old and starts laughing.
Yep.
It's the same kind of story, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And that's why I said, God has proven that he can do whatever he wants to do, regardless of the age of the person he's dealing with. But in this case, it just seems like Naomi's saying, look, man, we're all in deep trouble here, but I'm a little worse off here because God has gone out. The Lord has gone out against me.
Well, sure. And, it's the human inclination that when we're in these tough dilemmas and the things in the natural are just unraveling and falling apart, that we will turn and say, well, apparently God's not faithful with us. Mm-hmm. Apparently God doesn't love me, or whatever it is. And the reality is that God is there. He is divinely in control and sovereign, fully sovereign, but it doesn't mean we're going to be exempt from trying times and things that stretch us. Mm-hmm. And she does tend to focus a little bit on her personal loss. She does kind of turn away from God. She is showing signs of some bitterness, but she is amputating herself from the two Moabite daughter-in-laws.
She's trying to.
She's trying.
Yeah, and I think her motives are what's the word I'm looking for? I think they're righteous motives. I think she's not doing it because she doesn't want to be saddled with them. I think she's saying it's going to be hard enough for me as a widow. The three of us together, it's not going to make it any better. I don't think there's any great chance of you finding husbands where I'm going. Just go home and take care of yourselves. That's what I think. You know, she's got a somewhat justifiable concern here.
Right.
But
yeah, I get that. But, you know, it's so interesting to me in verse 13. She says, you know, would you remain unmarried for them? In other words, if you're going to wait for me to have kids, which are not likely
according to
happen,
the law, right?
And then it says, it is more bitter for me than for you. In other words, I haven't been dealt a very good hand here, but you've got hope.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm an old lady. I'm done. Then she says, because the Lord's hand has gone out from me. Now, the word Lord there, she's using Yahweh, the actual covenant name of God, the one that Israel's God.
Right.
And like you brought up earlier, and she's sending them back to a place where they're worshiping a different God. Okay?
Correct. Right.
But she's at least admitting that the Yahweh is sovereign, because she's saying his hand has drawn from me. So in other words, Yahweh doesn't have my backside covered here. And then in verse 14 it says, at this they wept again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. That's really interesting to me.
Yep.
But go back with her. But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or to turn my back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. And I was thinking about Peter, how he denied Jesus. Nope, I'm not going to turn my back on you.
Yeah,
nope, I'm going to be there no matter what. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. That's a wonderful testimony of faith. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me. When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. That's really beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, Ruth, I think, just so loves her mother-in-law that she's willing to cast everything aside. You know, Orpah takes the advice, and you know, Orpah's just doing what her mother-in-law wishes she would do. There's no big deal there. It's not.
Right.
There's no condemnation there on Orpah's part. She's doing what she's been. 3 times. I mean, Naomi goes at them and says, "Look, you guys need to just go home." But Ruth says, "No. You know, I will. We're in this together," and then that thing about your God will be my God. And it's just kind of like Abraham did. You know, he left an idolatrous land of his ancestors and went somewhere else, and she's going to do the same thing. Now, whether she knows, and realizes what's really happening here, we'll see. But for now, she's saying, look, if you have this faith in this God, then you know what? My love for you is so great that I'm in. Your God will be my God, your people will be my people, your customs, your ways, whatever it is, and we'll die together and be buried together, and it'll be, I'll take whatever God brings.
Yeah, well, it's pretty fascinating to me, and the 2 examples of the 2 daughters. Ruth has a much greater devotion than Orpah, okay? Not only to her mother, but to God as well. But what is fascinating to me is that Ruth is a Moabite, and to me, she's the example that all nations will be in the hands of God according to his will. That it's not just for the Israelites even at this point. You've got a foreign woman who, in a country they serve foreign gods, and she's being encouraged by her mother to obey and go back to the country and the foreign gods, and she doesn't do it. And that is just amazing. Now, the piece of the puzzle, I doubt that I've ever told you this one, Henry. I've mentioned it to a couple people around here in some of my years of struggles as my wife Lisa and I got married and we moved to Colorado from Arizona. There was so much craziness in my family, and I know you know some of that Lisa and I basically left and intentionally did not share where we were going. I mean, we uprooted, we sold everything, houses, she gave up her job. We came here without jobs in place, and just moved to Colorado, and we felt God was sending us here, and He was. We heard the food was plentiful here. No, but the point is, it got so bad in Arizona before we left with family squabbles and craziness, and I hadn't been married to my wife, Lisa, very long. I begged her to leave me. I said, we got X amount of money in savings. We just sold 3 businesses and a house, paid off debt, and nobody should have to put up with all this stuff. It's obvious that someone's going to die here, and so take off. You're released. Go find a real man that doesn't have all these issues in his family. Take the money, change your name, I'll annul the marriage. I tried all that stuff on her, and she just kept sitting there in the living room weeping, and she said, I am not leaving you. This would be 23 years ago or something like that. What do you think of that?
I wonder if you gave her that choice now, what her answer would be.
Oh, she'd be gone in a heartbeat. Oh, that's a good one. The house already has a for sale sign on it.
There you go.
It's vacant. Oh, that's a good one, yeah. No, she's going to be listening. We're going to have a conversation when she gets this broadcast.
I know.
Yeah.
No, you're
Wow.
both our wives, but knowing Lisa and getting to know her, she's upstanding. I mean, she's got great faith, and you're not getting out of it that easy.
Well, and here's the other interesting part is that I was the guy talking when we got married that I've got all this strong religious background. I could quote the scriptures. And yet when we got married, I wouldn't even set foot in a church. There was so much anger in my heart from everything, including the stuff in my family and things that went on in the church. And
you have quite the background.
I do. And I just kept going, I'm not doing it. And I'm done. But I had a devoted wife who literally drew me back in to the faith, and then everything turned from there. God used her as an instrument, I would say that.
And then said, I'm not ready to be a pastor's wife.
Oh, then when I told her, that's another story. That was 4 years after we got to Colorado. Yep.
Well, but it's funny how all that works, right? And God will wait as long as He needs to wait.
Yeah.
And in this case, there's something planned. There's a big plan in play here. And the wheels are set in motion through all these circumstances, and so we'll see how it plays out.
Well, it was interesting that I said to my wife, Lisa, it's fun, and I haven't brought this story up in so long because it's been over 20 years, but I said to her, not everybody needs to die here. And this thing is so bad, somebody will be dying. It's coming down. And so I said, I'll stay and die, kind of like I'll be the captain on the ship. I'll go down with it, and you take off, take the dinghy to shore, and run to another land, go find another man, everything.
She wasn't having it.
Yeah, and she's like, no, if someone's going to die, we're dying together. It's not going down. And I look at the devotion of Ruth, and I know why so many people are in love with the book of Ruth. And that's kind of my closing thought is in your own relationships, your relationship with God and your relationship with your family, make sure your devotion is genuine and you don't just turn tail and run when times get desperate, because this is a story of tragedy, but it's also a story of great devotion and love.
Well, when the devotion goes to God first, then those relationships and all that devotion to those around you grows. And so that's the thing of, you always talk about it's got to be God first and everybody else second. That's what Jesus meant when He said, if you don't hate your life, hate your father, mother, brother, sister, those who don't hate. His point was God has to come first. That plan for salvation has to come first. And then those relationships that you're involved with, God will feed through you and make them grow. And this is what's happening here. Ruth is just casting everything on God and on Naomi, and she's in. She's all in. And no matter what happens, if they die, she's going to die with her. But she's going to accept everything that happens, and she's not going to abandon Naomi. And I think that's a great sign, too, because a lot of times when things get rough, we bail. Man, we bail because we just don't want to deal with the drama. We don't want to deal with the issues. We don't want to deal with it being uncomfortable, whatever that is. We bail so often, and Ruth's not going there. And we're going to find out that Ruth's going to be rewarded in the long run.